This episode of From Angel to Exit is brought to you by the CEO's Right Hand. The CEO's Right Hand provides customized outsourced finance, accounting, and human resource services tailored to small and medium-sized businesses. Their services include fractional CFO, HR support, capital raising, and financial infrastructure development. They emphasize personalized engagements and expert support to drive growth and operational efficiencies. If you want to find out more, visit theceosrighthand.co. Are you serious about planning a successful business exit? From Angel to Exit is your go-to resource. Subscribe to our newsletter at eckfeldt.com/podcast for even more valuable insights. And to get personalized guidance, take our free exit readiness assessment. It's just 24 questions, and it will give you a clear picture of your exit readiness. Find the assessment at eckfeldt.com/exit. Submit your results, and we'll schedule a free follow-up call to discuss your specific situation and the best way to maximize your valuation and ensure a successful transaction. Now, back to the episode. Welcome, everyone. This is From Angel to Exit. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. Our guest today is Ujwal Arkalgud. He is a founder. He's an investor. He's an exited business owner. We're going to talk about experience he's had, about what he's been doing today. He's got a lot of experience, not only as a founder and as an exiter, or a founder that has exited, but as an investor as well. So we're going to kind of understand kind of the work he's doing, what he's seen, and really his experience and what advice he has, insights he has for earlier stage founders, planning for their exits, what they should think about, and hopefully some of the things that maybe they should avoid, experiences that they've had. So with all that, Ujwal, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So before we kind of dive into what you're doing today, would love to get a little bit of background. How did you get into business? What was your professional kind of experience? Give us a little of the backstory.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my passion actually for business was sort of circumstantial, or luck, if you will, in the sense that I fell in love with the field of social anthropology when I was doing an engineering degree. And, you know, growing up in India, if you don't know what you're doing and you come from a middle-class family, you end up in engineering. That's pretty much how it goes. And so, you know, there I was in these depressing soil mechanics classes. And somebody handed me this philosophy book, and it was, you know, the early 1900s. And suddenly, you know, in my head, I was asking questions of human behavior and trying to understand why human beings behave the way they do. And I just fell in love with the field. And so my entire drive to become an entrepreneur was that because I'd become so passionate about cultural anthropology, but I didn't have a PhD in cultural anthropology. You know, the entire drive was, because nobody will hire me as a researcher, I'm going to hire myself as a researcher. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to become the chief anthropologist. And this is how it's going to go. So that's literally how it all began for me.
I love it. Give us a little more specific definition of cultural anthropology. Like what is this, you know, science or body of work, like, and what was really so interesting about it for you?
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting part is that it studies meaning in language. And so in particular, you know, the classic example is we can learn a lot about how, as human beings, we give meaning to words and ideas by simply looking at the context within which something is used or talked about. Okay. Yeah, a simple example is, you know, certainly in North America, we talk about the word argument or even the word debate through the lens of winning or losing. So the construct is one of going to war. When we have a debate or an argument with somebody, you change the cultural context to a culture like China, a culture like France, it is not the same. And the way you learn that is by looking at language, how people talk about the concept of a debate or an argument, and you learn so much. So that's what really fascinated me, that just by looking at patterns of language and context, you could learn so much about not just what human beings believe, but why they believe something. And when you learn why they believe something, you can then figure out how to change their minds or how to impact them or engage with them. So that kind of became, you know, sort of the fascination.
Yeah, I remember my Noam Chomsky readings and stuff like that, and you know, the structure, how language structures our thinking, and you know, we can't we can't think outside of language. So those constraints
Exactly.
are impacting, our thinking models. And yeah,
That's exactly it. And, we could argue it's a chicken and egg thing, Did we impact language or did language impact us? But, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is that it is cyclical, and there's so much that can be learned. And as we'll talk about over the next few minutes, that has sort of been the common thread throughout my career, whether it's starting my business or how now I invest in other businesses, or what my next startup is. Everything that's sort of the connective tissue for me. Yeah.
What so tell us a little bit about the business. Like, I like this idea of like I wanted to study, so I created a business to give me a contact here. Like, how did that actually work?
Yeah, I mean, I started to, I was working in advertising because I'd just finished an MBA degree. I'd moved to Canada, and I had student loans to pay off as usual. Mm-hmm. And so, I was in advertising because it paid really well. But as I was there, I had contact with all these incredible, CMOs of all these major corporations. And one of the things I would find is nobody really talked about culture. Nobody talked about meaning. And everybody was trying to make meaning or make sense of meaning in advertising, but nobody was actually studying it. And so that was the impetus to say, hey, if nobody's doing it, why can't I teach these people to do this? Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I don't have a PhD degree, but that's okay. I'm going to just start a business and, help people do this.
Yep.
And so that's kind of how it began. But I very quickly realized in the early days that not having a formal degree or not having worked in market research became huge impediments. People wouldn't believe me, when I said I could help them, or quite simply, I had no credibility. And so I constantly went back to my own training, my own self-taught training over 10 years in anthropology to say, okay, if this was an anthropological problem, how would I solve it? And so that kind of became the thesis for how I built the business, constantly hacking my way into building instant credibility, getting attention from the right people, landing big business. And I'll give you one example.
Yeah, please.
One of the earliest things I learned is if you want to build credibility, the average person starts with, hey, here's my background, here's my experience, here's the degrees I have, I went to Yale, whatever. And all of that is now sort of par for the course. It's boring.
Table stakes, kind of.
Table stakes, right? And I didn't have any of those. So I thought to myself, okay, if you look at human psychology, what builds credibility? When you create a curiosity gap. Okay. And so my entire focus became, okay, I know something that, for example, these heads of innovation, heads of marketing in these large companies don't, which is how meaning is created in culture. And so my entire conversation starter was to say something that was slightly counterintuitive, that obviously I believed in, that was the core of our business, but that created a curiosity gap and people wanted to talk to me.
Yeah.
And the moment it created the curiosity gap, nobody cared what degree I had, where I lived, none of that mattered.
Just solve this gap for me.
Exactly, right? And so now you're having this engaging discussion with the prospect, and it's not a sale anymore. You're just immediately some kind of a partner that can potentially be of great use to them.
Yeah,
right?
Sounds very kind of challenger sale. I don't know if you got into the challenger sale model, like Dixon and those folks, but creating that unresolved kind of thinking gap that then I'm the one that can help you bring it together, and they have to. Like, I can't not keep talking to you because I can't stand living in the world without having this resolved.
It's exactly on the same lines. I think the main difference is that oftentimes when you say something counterintuitive, you may not even be challenging something that the prospect believes or is doing, but you're simply giving them something that is counter to common knowledge. And in fact, most often they would agree with you on those points, but it just would make them think differently. And that the human reaction to being able to think differently is, hey, tell me more. This is kind of interesting. And of course, you have to be careful. You can't begin that way and then just make somebody feel stupid, because that doesn't work, right? And so I very quickly ended up creating this kind of, I thought of it like a video game, because I wanted to reduce the stress, because sales didn't come naturally to me. So I turned it into a bit of a game. I said, okay, so, have I opened with the counterintuitive position?
Do you have an example, like an example of one of the things you opened with in those cases?
Yeah, so I would go to CMOs, for example, and say, hey, are you tracking trends? Yeah, of course, I'm tracking trends. You're General Mills, you're tracking all the food trends. And I tell them, look, the trends that you think are trends are actually not trends. They're manifestations of underlying trends. And I'd give them an example. So you think, I don't know, probiotics is a trend. Yeah. This is back then. Actually, it's not. Actually, the real trend is that people are losing faith in the healthcare system. Yeah. And probiotics is one among many other things people are doing in order to take control back. And the CMO would go, wait, what? That's really powerful. Yeah. Tell me more. Yeah. And then it just so happened that our technology showed them that. Yeah. Right? And so we were in, right? And so this is how, in our first 3 months of business, we acquired General Mills and started working with their head of innovation, doing these massive innovation projects. One of our first projects with them was to help them do research so they could justify an acquisition. Yeah. And so we were in the moment that happened. And then, somebody at General Mills was married to somebody at Target, so they called us up. Nice. And then, the rest is history. And so, but that kind of became the central thesis for me, is I realized this is how I'm going to work smarter, not harder. And, over 7 years, kind of built this business to exit. Yeah.
Now, when did you, I guess, seriously consider or think that, hey, this is something I could actually exit?
So actually, at the end of year 3, we had crossed 5 mil-ish in revenue. We're a services business because we had no cash to build technology. I didn't even know how to build technology, to be honest. So we were a services business, and I suddenly realized that everything that we were doing manually could be automated. And of course, back then, AI technology wasn't as evolved or accessible as it is today. So, and we were cash rich. We were operating at 95% gross margin. Exactly. It was just nuts. So we took some of our cash and we hired 2 incredible developers who were already on the cutting edge. And they basically came in and built our AI system. So in year 4, we just January 1st sent a note to all our clients saying, okay, from now on, you can't work with our services side anymore. It's done. Yeah. It's closed.
No more services.
It's a technology. And so as scary as that was, we just went cold turkey on that. And so in year 4, we went from 5 million to, less than $1 million in revenue, and then scaled it back up again. So
I guess, did you anticipate it would be that big of a rebuild, or like how much of this was strategic and you knew exactly what was going to happen, and how much of this was, wow, this was it was a little more dramatic than we thought?
I mean, there was definitely a lot of strategy behind it. It was still scary, obviously, going through it. The strategy was that I knew, just again from everything I've learned, that if you have built credibility, people will come. Yeah. So even if you change their product and it requires a little bit of adjustment, and corporate clients don't like adjustment, right? They don't like change. So we knew that part would be hard, but all these customers of ours, they trusted us. Not a single one of them left. They took a break for about 6 months, 12 months when we did the switch, but we got every single one of them back. Yeah. And instead of doing $20,000, $30,000 projects, we were signing $250,000, $500,000 ARR deals. And so it just changed completely. But we knew we had built so much credibility over the first 3 years that transition would not be would be possible. We knew it was possible. Yeah. We knew it would be hard. But I think, Bruce, this is also part of what I find now, talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. There's, and we can get into it a little bit more, but credibility is something that is so undervalued, understood. People don't think about it. People think credibility is something to be bought, right? I'm going to do a bunch of ads, hire a head of sales who's got industry experience, I don't know, bring on some hotshot engineer onto the team, put that on the deck, and then it's done. They don't realize that actual credibility involves having a point of view, having a hypothesis, being open about it, having the client work with you to test it, validate it, measuring every single thing. not being afraid to actually see where you fail and where you succeed, and then take the outcome of those initial clients and then blow that up, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs, they're so scared to do the service part because, it's hard. Customers expect a lot from you, and they emotionally beat you up, especially in the early days. Exactly. And so people are so scared, they don't measure anything. And I think this is where there's such a huge, I just feel like there's so much money left on the table, and a lot of these companies don't get what they deserve because they're just not doing the hard grunt work of, actually engaging with the customers, sitting down, getting feedback, getting beaten up. It's part of the process.
Do you think, if looking back on, how things played out for you, do you think it played out the way it needed to, or would you have gone product earlier? Or I'm kind of curious, like what you learned from the services that fed the product, and did you kind of have to do that, or would you do it differently?
I think we could have probably made the switch to product maybe a year and a half earlier.
Okay.
I think about 2 years in, we're $3 million revenue, taking home $500,000 a year, and we were kind of sitting pretty. And you get comfortable very fast. And we got comfortable driving nice cars, upgrading our homes, this kind of stuff, and then suddenly you get a wake-up call that, hang on, this was not what we wanted to do. We wanted to build a business that would survive after we left. That was always the vision. And so I think that's when things started to really click, that we needed tech. But for sure, knowing now, having been through that experience, I would have made the transition much faster.
Yeah. Now, I guess how much of that transition was kind of focused on, hey, I want something that can survive beyond, me, versus kind of this, hey, this is something I could actually sell at some point. It's transactable on this thing. How motivated were you by the idea of selling the business at some point?
Actually, on day one, when my business partner and I sat down, we talked about our vision, and we talked about two things. One is lifestyle-wise, what do we want from the business, ideal world, and we made sure we were aligned on that. Everything from how much money we wanted to make to how much we wanted to work, where we wanted to work from, what our family life. We both have kids. What is that going to look like? We want to travel, all that stuff, and then we also talked about what we wanted the business to do, and we were both very clear. We both felt like before year 10 we wanted to get rid of the business. So either we shut it down, or we sell it. Worst case, we hire people and we just kind of float around. But we knew that I don't think either of us expected to have the energy to run this for life, for sure. So we always knew we wanted to sell it. I think the decision to switch to technology was part of that, because first-time entrepreneurs, we didn't really understand the world of exits well enough. And so as you start to meet other entrepreneurs and you start to network, you learn a lot. And one of them one day took me aside, and I remember he said to me, let me give you two examples. Your business right now, the way it sits, so profitable, you might be lucky if you get 2 times your revenue. Same business, you bring technology into it, in fact, you could be a little less profitable and you'd get 10 times revenue. And so that kind of blew my mind in that moment, and then I started to do research on it, and that's kind of how that journey began.
And I guess when did you feel like you started the process for actually moving towards an exit? Like, when did you feel like you actually, started to engage in the market and things like that?
We randomly had an offer in 2019 when we weren't really expecting. We were still building. The one thing I will say is that when we made the shift to technology, we did a ton of research and talked to a ton of people. And so we decided to structure the business so that it was more exit ready.
Okay. And what did that entail? Like, what did you...
Biggest part, Bruce, was, so we're selling a SaaS technology to corporate customers. The problem is, and we learned this through the services side, is corporate customers are very used to being spoon-fed. I'm trying to say this as gently as possible. They're very used to being spoon-fed and waited over. So they don't like using technology. It's finally changing now. They have no choice. But back then, no. And so we realized we needed a service layer so that the technology could be used in order to deliver a service alongside it, so that we're literally reading the technology and interpreting it for them, and facilitating brainstorm sessions and all that. The problem is, the moment you do that, it affects your it affects how much revenue can be recognized as genuine recurring revenue, right? And then there's GAAP challenges, accounting principle challenges, and all the other stuff. And so we had to figure out how to wrangle that together. It took some experimentation. Eventually, we realized that the best way to do it was to keep the support services layer unlimited and to restrict the technology. So every technology access came with support layer. And so you could, from an accounting standpoint, a CFO who's buying us could never argue that, hey, I can't recognize this as ARR. But yeah, that was kind of part of the process of discovering that. But that took, it took us a good year of experimentation, because part of it is what you want to do for valuation and to be exit ready. Part of it is what your customers are willing to handle as well. Right. And we were doing all this stuff in an industry that was not ready for any of this, because market research traditionally was all services. So people were used to paying for projects. They weren't used to paying subscriptions. So already we were just completely changing the paradigm there. But yeah, when we got this random offer in 2019, and it was for, I don't know, a third of the valuation we eventually got. But we took the deal and went through due diligence, and they pulled out sort of, I don't know, 80% of the way in. Wow. And it was a big gut punch for us.
And what was their rationale, or what happened there?
The biggest issue was we hadn't consistently shown how we could package up an annual contract that had a services layer, had a technology layer, and it just worked seamlessly together. That part, we were still tightening the ship there, and that caused doubt in the buyer. Right? And so it just wasn't rock solid. Now in hindsight, we know that.
They didn't want to have to close themselves.
They just didn't want to have to close that gap themselves. And so it was a gut punch, because it was still, back then it was still a $20 million deal or something like that. And it still felt pretty big to let go of. But it was the biggest learning experience going through that process, and they were very gracious. The CFO there sat us down and helped us understand why they pulled out. So that was really, really helpful. And then the next 2 years, it was like hockey stick growth, because COVID hit. Suddenly, all corporations wanted online research, and then it was boom. Right, and then we had fixed some of these problems, so we were exit ready. And so then when we were ready to sell, and we put it on the market, we had 7 competitive bids.
It was just unique, kind of name your price kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I always find that the deals that don't work out, can be some of the best, the best outcomes, right? Because it's like you learn things, right? If it doesn't work out, it probably meant it wasn't a good deal, right? Like it wasn't a good fit. So as painful as it is in the moment, it can often be, good for the company longer term.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I try to talk to, and I talk to a lot of founders now just out of interest. It's nice because other people helped me out when I was doing this the first time around. And I talk to a lot of them, but it's just human nature. 80% of them say they want advice. They don't really want advice. But the 20% that take it, you can see the impact, right? I had this one founder just email me because she was reading the newsletter a few weeks ago, and emailed me back, and then we had a call, and she was literally making some important structural decisions about getting exit ready over the next 2 years, thinking 2-3 years ahead. And I got another email from her literally this morning saying, here's the changes I've made, and it's already helping. Good. And it gives me a lot of joy to see people do that.
In terms of the exit, so fortunate position, and that you had a lot of offers, and I guess what did you do to prepare yourself, I guess, for that process in terms of understanding your priorities and what your minimums were and what you're willing to kind of negotiate and what was kind of things you weren't willing to negotiate, and then how did that play out? Like, I'm curious, like, how dramatic the negotiations were, if it was, table, lots of, back and forth. Give us a little story around that.
Yeah, I think there were two things. One is from day one, and I just want to mention this, we were very careful. We never put a single dollar of personal expense into the business. Yeah. And I know every founder says they don't do that, but they do that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because our argument was that every dollar saved could mean 15x.
Yeah, exactly.
Because every dollar in EBITDA could mean 15x back to us eventually. So
whatever I save in tax, like I'm losing a huge amount of multiple on it.
Exactly. And so that was always our mentality there. So first and foremost, when it came to accounting, it was super easy.
Yeah.
Right. So there was nothing. Maybe they had like 5 clarification questions. Yeah. That business expense for travel, like what conference was that? Stuff like that. So that was easy. The second part was when we were ready for exit, we went to an investment banker and we put ourselves on the market. Mm-hmm. We wanted to do that just because we knew that the 4% that they take will more than pay for itself. Yeah. Because they'll get competitive bids going.
Yeah. And how did you choose your IB, your investment banker?
We did a lot of interviewing, talked to maybe 10 different folks, boutiques, bigger firms. Mm-hmm. In the end, we went with a slightly bigger firm. But I think the big piece for us was access. Because, somebody in private equity who's doing deals, or somebody in a strategic who's, in the M&A team, first of all, they have to know these people because they have to open their emails and know them well enough that they respond and get a call on the books. Because oftentimes, like I think most often that these things are done anonymously, right? Somebody will get a 1-page deck and has very little information, and they're supposed to decide whether they want to have a conversation. So a lot of it is relationship based. So I think that's what it really came down to, is we asked for proof of what deals have you done, with whom, who do you know, and that's how we ended up deciding. And I say this to a lot of founders now, so critical.
That's smart.
And so that was that piece. And then in terms of the bidding
your
process,
expectation, I mean, did you have like a number that you wanted to hit, or terms that were really important to you coming out of that deal?
We wanted to do a majority cash deal. Okay. No earnout, nothing.
Okay.
We knew we were in that position just because, we were still operating at close to 70% EBITDA. So we knew we had a lot of choice. And so, cash deal, we knew maybe it might be an 80-20, 80% cash, 20% equity. That's okay. But we definitely did not want an earnout, and we didn't want any kind of lock-in post-exit. Mm-hmm. So that was non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. And then we had a baseline number that we wanted to hit that we had discussed with the IB guys. Anything
with like team, or like how, like continuity of the current business, or retaining staff, or the things like that came up for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were a pretty lean team. Obviously, we were so profitable. We were pretty lean, about 30 people. We knew there was I would say about 80% of the staff that were just excellent. We had real talent density in the organization.
Sounds like it.
So for us, it was just important that that 80% was protected, and then among that 80%, there was a leadership layer under the founders that was they were just excellent. We wanted to make sure they had much bigger career opportunities coming out of that, and some kind of incentive through the exit and all that kind of stuff. So we had all of those things, but what we very quickly learned was those things were not a big deal if the deal was right for the buyer. And we were also deliberately targeting private equity. Mainly,
why focus on the private equity side?
So we had a few conversations with strategics, And the M&A guys at these strategics, first of all, I found them really, really old school.
Yeah.
As in really not wanting to push the envelope with anything. So they were interested in the business, but they didn't want to ruffle any feathers. So if our business did anything that would take away even an ounce of dollars from their existing business, they didn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, oh, let's take this and modernize what we do. No.
Yeah.
And so that was really soul sucking for me, because I thought, after putting all this effort, imagine if they just take this and kill it.
Yeah.
Because bury it in some system.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big motivation. And then the second thing we found is they all said, because we had a stipulation, we wanted to do the deal in 4 months or less.
Okay.
Mainly because I was CEO, I was also CFO. And I was also involved in selling. I wasn't managing all the customers, but certainly I was the thought leader for the customers and customer facing. Yeah. There was no way I could sustain all of that together with, right?
Just like a business thing. I can't last longer than 4.
And I had 2 little kids at home. There's just no chance. And so I told them 4 months or less, and the strategic said 4 months, more like 8 to 12 months. And so that was a big no-no for us. So we went after private equity exactly for that reason. We did the deal in 3.5 months from start to finish. It was really intense, but God, am I thankful that we had that stipulation. Yeah. Because we started in January, and mid-April, we're done. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of some of the players, I mean, I guess how competitive were the bids, and what did you notice in terms of? I mean, was it very kind of apples to apples, like it was easy to compare them, or was this kind of apples oranges? It was tough to figure out how to make trade-offs between the offers that you were getting.
I think the biggest trade-off was in how much, in how the deal was structured. That was the biggest one. Yeah. Obviously, private equity's motivation is to pay you the least amount of cash up front. Yeah. Right, so they will try to construct a deal where they would rather give you a higher valuation but give you less cash now. And so we understood that, and so that was the big difference between some of the private equity bids, that we just got less cash up front, and we prioritized cash up front over the net deal value. Yeah. And I think the other big difference was just in terms of how the deal was structured and how open they were in managing through, because we had some early discussions, because our business involved, we had basically built our own LLM. Right? And when you do things like that, you've got technical processes and a fair bit of technical debt, especially as a startup, that you have to pay off at some point. And you have to, we just realized you have to find a buyer who understands what that technical debt is and sees it as the right kind of risk. Because it is still a risk for the buyer. And so all of that definitely went into it. So we had some of those early discussions just to feel out the buyer and understand, what might be a good fit for us. And then I would say the last bit was cultural as well. We wanted to talk to, because private equity will place you into one of their portfolio companies. We wanted to make sure that the portfolio company, we liked the people. We wanted to work with them. And then the leaders we met with, they were just all lovely and really, really exceptional at what they do. So that kind of really helped as well through that process. But the bids were all over the place.
Were they?
There were differences of sometimes up to 10 million in valuation. We did not take the highest valuation deal. We took the one with the highest amount of cash. And we're so happy we did it.
Good. That was going to be an next question. Well, so when did you close? When was the?
2022.
And how have things gone? Like, give us a little kind of, since the deal, what has happened? Have you been happy? What's come up?
We stuck around, my co-founder and I stuck around for 2 years just to kind of adjust the team into the new environment. We stuck around as long as we weren't an impediment. And I think at some point we realized we were now an impediment to what they wanted to do. Because, they had other plans in terms of how to structure the business. They weren't interested in killing the business. They were interested in growing it and structuring it in a way that is cohesive, which is completely understandable. And as a founder, you get attached to ideas, and so we realized at some point that that attachment isn't necessarily great for the overall business. And so we had an open conversation with them and decided, at the end of 2 years, it was a nice point to say goodbye.
How was it personally? Like, as I find that there's a lot of attachment to a business, particularly as a founder, right? And when you sell, there's stuff to process. Like, what did you notice personally as you
to be really, really honest, it was very depressing for the first 3 months after saying goodbye, because after exit, it doesn't really hit you until you actually leave and you're no longer seeing emails and talking to customers and doing all that stuff. We took off to France because we took the opportunity to put the kids in school there and kind of slow life down for a year. And I found myself sitting in France desperately trying to figure out what my next startup was, and being all, I was just itching to do something. And it took me about 3 months to realize that's how I was kind of processing it, trying to desperately make stuff up so I could be busy. But after I did that, it was great. I just kind of did nothing for a few months and then slowly wrote a book. The book turned into my next startup, and it all kind of happened organically, but it was rough. And I mean, I should say, in the most privileged way possible.
I get it. But it's, the thing I find, I've met several, entrepreneurs that have sold, exited, and they're sitting on a shit ton of money, but they're not necessarily happy. It doesn't drive happiness. Resources, right? And you can do things with it, and you can, make a very nice lifestyle in a lot of ways, but it doesn't fundamentally drive, engagement and happiness. So I guess So it sounds like you kind of found a path. The book led to the next startup. Give me a little sense of what you've been doing then, and then I'd love to hear, like, what would you have done differently? Like, or what are you going to do differently this time in terms of, building something and exiting and then figuring out the next thing? Any different strategies in terms of how you're approaching this?
So the book actually came about because I just finally realized the methodology I had used to build our business. So the book is called Invisible Rules, and the whole idea is, because over the course of the last year, I've just been advising founders through my alma mater and through the Toronto tech community, just to try to get involved and give back a little bit. And I realized that I had a very specific way I did things, and so that ended up becoming the book. And the whole premise of it is that there's the visible battlefield, and then there's stuff that's invisible. And if you really want to win, and don't want to play the volume game and the game of chucking money at the wall and trying to see what will stick, then you got to start thinking about invisible rules. And I give examples, there's a certain, for example, in certain industries, there's a way to present information. There are certain frames that work and certain frames that don't. You have to know what frame works. You have to know what language works, what language doesn't work. And then founders will say, how do I know that? And I tell them, when was the last time you went to an industry conference and you just literally listened, record every single session, shove it into ChatGPT, and ask it to do a linguistic analysis for you? You'll learn so much about the subtle cues, right? Things like that. And so, I found myself asking founders, can you tell me 3 phrases in your industry that the moment you say it, people trust you instantly? And they'd be like, I don't know. And I tell them, okay, then you don't know your industry well enough yet.
Interesting.
Right? Because that needs to be just top of mind for you. And so things like that. So that kind of led to the book. And it gave me a sense of purpose, because I want the book, it's coming out in April, but I want the book to help entrepreneurs think about the cultural side, the meaning side of everything that's happening, because there's so much focus on the logic. If we focus even a little bit on the psychological side of markets, I think we'd win so much more. And then I wrote the book and realized, okay, that book is my next startup. So I started a company called Creds AI, and it's completely focused on helping entrepreneurs and mid-sized companies build or engineer credibility, the same way I engineered credibility for myself. So So that's kind of, it all has come out organically. But to your earlier point, Bruce, I have so many friends who have gone through exits and they are gallivanting the world, going through, divorces and failed startups. They're lost, right? And the one difference is that nobody took time to just decompress and just let stuff come to you rather than go and find it. And I think that's been the big aha for me in the last year and a half. I've just had to wait for stuff to come to me. And it has. And it comes to everybody. It's just sometimes, you're in the luxurious position where you don't have to stress about money. So just let it come to you. So that's kind of how it's happened for me, is that it's kind of come to me now. And now I'm excited again.
I love it.
To build.
I love it. I have a whole chapter in my book that's coming out. Mine's probably going to be February, but which I talk about focus on attraction, not chasing, right? And this whole kind of set yourself up and figure out what do you want to attract, and that can still be very intentional and strategic, but it is a very different kind of frame to operate in rather than going out and trying to chase things at that point. It's like, okay, how do I just sit myself down and focus on what do I want to have come to me, and be patient, and don't force it, because you have time.
I love that. And as entrepreneurs, patience is the worst thing for all of us, right?
It's the thing. I mean, it's a classic leadership issue, which is it served you really well in building and scaling and exiting your business. It's going to work directly against you post exit. And you just need to be super aware and understand, hey, look, I know I want to do this. This is my muscle that I've really developed. But if I try to flex this muscle right now, it's not going to help me. It doesn't serve me. Yeah. So where do you want to be? Give me a vision for yourself in 3 to 5 years.
I think the vision is to start to scale this business, and now my next phase is to help other entrepreneurs, founders, sales leaders. I'm really enjoying that. So the vision is to scale this business and to get involved. Ideally, I would like venture capital firms to adopt systems like these. They don't have to adopt just mine, although if they did, I'd love that. But to adopt systems like these that drive capital efficient growth. That's something that would give me great joy, because there's so much wastage everywhere. And I think things are changing, because, for example, I just sent out a random 5 emails to some VCs. Every single one of them responded to me and said, oh, that's kind of interesting, because we are reimagining how we think about capital efficiency. Finally. Right? And so
it took us a while.
So that's kind of the vision, is that, I want to be part of this next movement where we focus more on capital efficiency. I really, as a Canadian, I definitely fear for what's happening to entrepreneurship in the country, because we were on a roll, and then the last 10 years really gone downhill. So I'm hopeful, and I want to be part of sort of the next wave of kind of regenerating some of that energy as well. So
would you put together your own VC fund?
It's definitely on the cards, but I'm not sure yet. At the moment, I want to focus on this next startup, getting my book out, and then we'll see. Maybe even get involved with some other VC fund where there's a values alignment. But
I get it. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. If people want to get a hold of you, find out more about what you're doing, more about the book, what's the best way to get that?
There are a couple of ways. You can go to invisible-rules.com. You can check out my newsletter, my upcoming book. You can find me with my first name last name on Instagram, on LinkedIn as well. I'd love to connect. If you follow my newsletter, just so you know, it's growing, but I have about 3,000 people subscribing. I get every newsletter edition, I get maybe 50, 60, 100 responses where people just want to chat, and I respond to every single one of them because I genuinely enjoy it. So my call to entrepreneurs is, follow, engage, because it gives me it energizes me.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Bruce.